Hello and welcome to another edition of CEBL Weekly here on CEBL Plus. Once again, I am your host, Sean Woodley, here to get you up to speed on all things recent past and near future in the Canadian Elite Basketball League. And what an opening week it's been. On today's show, we'll hear from a U Sports developmental success story whose clutch free throw on Friday night in Hamilton earned his team a second win of the season. We'll share a video feature from our pal Kayla Gray over at TSN's The Shift. And I've been asked a lot about it this past week, but don't worry, we're bringing it back. The weekly power rankings for the very first time will be laid out on today's show. Prepare your aggrieved messages to me accordingly. But before we get to all of that and more, I want to offer some thoughts on what, to me, was the most exciting week for the Canadian Elite Basketball League in the 4 years I've been involved with the league. Let's take a look back at opening night first. You had 3 games that night, all decided by single digits, with 2 of them coming down to just a single possession difference in the Elam ending. That same night, we saw a 37-point debut by Ottawa's Deng Adel, a 34-point debut by Niagara import Khalid Ahmad, and 23 points for Saskatchewan's new import Scotty Lindsay in their win over the River Lions, all of which quickly dispatched any fears that the losses of stars like Xavier Moon and Lindell Wigginton would leave the league light on talent. In fact, the league has more talent right now than it ever has before, and I'm happy to put my stamp on that claim. And that was very much on display on Thursday night as well in Guelph, which for my money was the single best night in the history of the CEBL. Inside the Sleeman Center, you had Scarborough's J. Cole and all the fanfare he brings with him. You had former Raptor Jalen Harris making his CEBL debut, and Cat Barber, fresh off laying waste to the G League, making his return to the Royal City. Courtside were Canadian NBA stars like O'Shea Brissett and Nikhil Alexander-Walker soaking in the very best of Canadian hoops. Hell, I even had ESPN in my DMs asking me to use one of the videos I took of J. Cole in warm-ups. And best of all, we got a hell of a game as Guelph surged late for a huge home win in front of a raucous crowd and surely more eyeballs on the action than have ever been on a CEBL game considering all the fanfare ahead of time. You follow that up the very next night with another next bucket win situation in Hamilton on Friday, Edmonton's championship ring and banner ceremony with Xavier Moon sitting right there in the crowd to cap off the doubleheader that night, and Montreal's very first win in comeback fashion over their expansion cousins from Scarborough on Sunday. And you've got to be out of your mind to not think this was an incredible week of basketball to open the season. I'm absolutely thrilled. 8 games down, 92 to go, the CEBL has very much arrived. This season on CEBL Weekly, we want to bring to you the stories of the players who make up the CEBL with a little segment we're calling the Weekly Spotlight as we zoom in on one player making waves throughout the league. This week, we'll start with Thomas Kennedy, the forward for the Fraser Valley Bandits, who spent last season playing for the Hamilton Honey Badgers, for whom he played 14 games and got into 9 games as a starter. It was those same Hamilton Honey Badgers that Kennedy dispatched on Friday night in Hamilton with a pair of clutch free throws in a next bucket win situation in the Elam ending. With the help of the video team out in Fraser Valley, here's a look at Thomas Kennedy, his growth as a player, and the way the U Sports development program within the league has helped him become the pro he is today. After getting into just 1 game for the Hamilton Honey Badgers back in 2019 as a U Sports developmental player, Windsor native Thomas Kennedy started more than half the games for Ryan Schmidt's Badgers squad last summer. Now, the 21-year-old Windsor Lancers forward is out west, playing heavy rotation minutes in Fraser Valley coach Mike Taylor's front court rotation. As one of the mainstays of the league's U Sports development program since its outset, Kennedy says the opportunity to bump up against pros has been a game changer.
I think the biggest benefit for me has just been the early access to preparation for the professional game. Obviously, the professional game is just bigger, faster, stronger than the university level, especially at the position I'm playing. Bigger guys, much more physicality, and getting used to that. It's more of a transition so that when I do come out of school at the U Sport level, I'll be ready for the professional game.
The U Sports schedule got absolutely mangled by the pandemic. The 2020-21 season was canceled outright, returning only for a shortened campaign this past winter. For Kennedy, the CEBL has not only been an outlet for joy, but it's offered a competitive edge as well.
It's been amazing, especially last year in 2021. it was huge because the majority of my teammates who I have at Windsor spent 21 months away from the court, while I was fortunate enough to only spend 15 months away because I resumed in May of 2021 rather than October last year with the CEBL season. So that was really big. You forget what life's like without basketball, and it's much better with it. So.
Kennedy's not the only dude with Windsor in his bones on the Bandits roster. His teammate and 2019 Finals MVP Alex Campbell was a Lancers star of Kennedy's youth. Their connection goes well beyond being Bandits teammates.
And it's not even just been our short time as teammates. I've known Alex for a long time. Me being a hometown Windsor kid, I watched him play. I had the opportunity to train with him train me. And the biggest thing from him is just continued improvement, right? Like you never arrive, you never get there. You always want to be better, and he is a perfect example of that, whether it's putting work after practice, or really just look at his resume, where he's come from since leaving Windsor. He's just continued to get better every year and really make the best out of his career.
So what's the vibe like among the CEBL's U Sports guys? Supportive? Maniacally competitive? Maybe a little both?
I would say it's probably a little bit of both, but the majority of it is supportive. Last year I had the opportunity to play a little bit more as I do with my role this year. And it's funny, like a lot of these U Sport guys who I've played against for 2 or 3 years, I never really talked to until we face off against each other in the CEBL. And that's basically like, how's your experience going? This is how mine's going. Like, how's your role? This is my role. And it's a good opportunity to connect. And then when we go back to the U Sport level, we're supporting each other, we're seeing each other again when we play against each other. And that's probably when it gets a little bit more competitive, is when you play another CEBL U Sport player at the college level, it's like, I want to show that I'm even better at this level than the other level.
In just his second game with the Bandits up against his old squad in Hamilton, including U Sports pal Kevan Vino, Kennedy picked up 2 free throws in a next bucket win situation in the Elam ending. It's as pressure-packed a situation as he's found himself in as a pro to date. So how exactly did he steel himself to knock down his free throws? Enter Aussie guard Kyle Adnam.
At first there were some nerves, but the first thing I said to myself, I said it's just like any other day. And then if you were at training camp this year for Fraser Valley and you were any of my teammates, you'd be worried that I was saying that because I wasn't shooting my free throws too well recently. But then my point guard, Kyle, he came over and he broke my nerves. Before I even touched the ball, and I mentioned this a few times, he just said, "That looks so pretty." He said it twice. He said, "That looks so pretty." I didn't even touched the ball. Like, there was a little bit of delay. I'm waiting for it. Made me laugh, cut the nerves out. I was ready to knock down 2 free throws.
With 18 more CEBL games this season and another full year at Windsor on Kennedy's short-term agenda, you'd forgive him for focusing on the here and now. But as he says, the CEBL has only crystallized his goal of playing pro ball full-time.
I've always been motivated to be a professional basketball player, and this has just furthered that motivation, and really, honestly, the best word to use is just got me more eager to play. I've loved my time at Windsor, but I'm ready to play some professional basketball full-time.
A huge thank you goes to Justin Solpico for help putting that piece together, part of the Fraser Valley Bandits video team. And with that, let's move into the segment that everyone's been asking for. I'm not kidding. I got asked by like 5 different people this week at various CEBL games, where are the power rankings? Well, they're here now. Get ready to yell at me. Let's start with number 10. First up, we have the Newfoundland Growlers in a cop-out choice by me. They have yet to play a game and they don't start their season until June the 4th, meaning they can't legally get mad at me for being in 10th place until they played that one game. We'll see where they slot in on next week's rankings. We move on to number 9 as the Scarborough Shooting Stars occupy the second from bottom spot, sporting an 0-2 record after this first week of the season. Look, this team is loaded with talent. Jalen Harris is one of the most talented scorers in the league for sure. Xavier May is a former record holder in terms of points per game in the CEBL too. You got JV Mukama, Khalif Young, and lots of other interesting role players completing that roster, but they haven't quite put it together yet and really struggled in Elam time. For now, they're number 9, but there's plenty of upward mobility here for the Shooting Stars. Taking up the 8th spot are the Saskatchewan Rattlers, who spent most of last season in 7th, but this is actually better because there are, of course, 10 teams in the league now, and they are not bringing up the bottom. And in fairness, they should probably be a little bit higher here as well. The difference between them and the 7th team is frankly just a matter of point differential. This Sask team has some very interesting talent. Tony Carr and Scotty Lindsay are fantastic imports. You get the return of Devontae Bandu, and Coach Dean Demopoulos has brought a real culture and structure to that roster. It's just going to need a little bit of time here before the Rattlers can climb on up, but they have plenty of upward motion, much like Scarborough. In 7th, we have the Montreal Alliance, who picked up their first ever win on Sunday, taking down the aforementioned Shooting Stars. This team is still a bit of a mystery to me in terms of how all the pieces are going to come together. Lots of players who have never played in the CEBL before, but they are led by Kemi Osei, one of their team captains, who's got plenty of CEBL experience. And if import Dominic Green keeps up putting 30 burgers on the board, then the Alliance stand a really good chance of climbing up the rankings going forward as well. In 6th place, we have the 1-1 Hamilton Honey Badgers, who in fairness are kind of incomplete right now. They're still waiting for some talent to return from their seasons overseas, including Aaron Best and Mikhail McIntosh, who should add a ton of creation to a team that already has quite a bit of ball handling between Kobe McEwen, Caleb Agata, and Kevon Vino. They've also got a really good import center in Jeremiah Tillman Jr., who figures to be a load for teams all season long, but we've still got to see what this team looks like once they reach full strength before they start moving up. In 5th place, we have the defending champion Edmonton Stingers, who have a lot of continuity, no doubt. Jordan Baker's out here throwing 6.5 assists a game. They've got Matthew Kamba back, Marlon Johnson, and a whole bunch of guys who are familiar faces out there, plus Jermaine Small steering the ship. However, they did lose their opening night game to Niagara, and it's still a little bit uncertain where the star power is going to come from this team to fill in the void left by Xavier Moon. It could come from within the ranks for sure, but let's wait and see for next week. Now, this is probably where some people are going to get mad at me, except for our friends in Ottawa, of course. I have the Blackjacks in 4th place. They're 0-1 at the time of recording here, and that might cause some questions. However, they might have the very best player in the entirety of the CEBL in the form of former Cleveland Cavalier, Deng Adel, who had 37 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists on 14 of 16 shooting in his CEBL debut on opening night for Ottawa in their loss to Fraser Valley. And frankly, I think Ottawa wins that game if Deng Adel doesn't foul out in the middle of the Elam ending, and he might have gone on to set the all-time single-game scoring record for points as well. He was just 2 off of tying Xavier Moon's record of 39, 3 points away from taking the record. That's going to be in some trouble this season, I think, if Deng Adel is bringing his combination of size and gracefulness to the floor for Ottawa each and every night. Look, it's basketball. What do you want me to say? Usually the best player is going to help you win. Ottawa's 4th because they have Deng Adel. Not to be outdone in the star import category are the Niagara River Lions, who had a pair of imports shine this week. Khalid Ahmad had 34 points in his opener on Wednesday, and EJ Onu from the Memphis Hustle in the G League had 9 blocks over the course of the first 2 games for the River Lions and figures to be part of the Defensive Player of the Year conversation all season long. At 1-1 with a win over the defending champs, I'm saying the River Lions are at the top of this massive teams, all with 500 records. Up in 2nd place, I have the 1-0 Guelph Nighthawks, and in fairness, they play a game on Tuesday night that will happen before this airs, so please forgive me if I look silly for saying this, but the Nighthawks are legit. They're 1-0, and the trio of Kat Barber, Ahmed Hill, and AJ Lawson looks like it's going to be a problem for opposing defenses all season long. Not to mention, they won their opener against Scarborough with their defense late in that game, turning over the Shooting Stars a handful of times going into the Elam ending and then on their way to the big victory. They, for now, are number 2 for me. We'll see what happens in that game against Niagara on Tuesday night, which again will have already happened by the time this airs. And taking up the top spot in the very first CEBL power rankings of the season, the Fraser Valley Bandits, the only 2-0 team in the league who picked up their victories in next bucket win situations in a pair of thrillers, first on opening night in Ottawa, then on Friday in Hamilton. The Bandits have been awesome, and they've been powered by their killer Canadian duo of guards in Kayla Gray and Alex Campbell. Campbell, we know, he's been in the league every year of his existence, and he was the very first CEBL Championship Weekend MVP, and Kayla Gray, one of the most prolific youth sports players of all time. Those guys under Coach Mike Taylor, with the role players he's got around them, are going to drive that team to a lot of wins this season. They'll finish up a 3-game road trip to start the season this week against Saskatchewan with a chance to pad their numbers and continue their stay atop the top of the power rankings going in to week number 2. Now, you might have noticed this week that the attention on the CEBL from around the media is as high as it's ever been. And of course it should be. The last week was incredible, as electrifying a 7-day stretch as the league has ever seen. One of the people turning the spotlight to the league is Kayla Gray from TSN and the wonderful show that you should be watching, The Shift. Let's take a look now at Kayla Gray's Homegrown, her look at the CEBL and its rise in Canadian basketball prominence.
Growing up, the thought of basketball being this well-oiled machine in Canada, it was nothing but a dream. Yeah, I think we can say that things done change.
Basketball has never been bigger north of the border.
There's a lot of Canadian content in the NBA right now. It's really quality players.
The future of Canadian basketball is extremely bright.
It's a reality now. With basketball being the second fastest growing sport in the world, what else can be done to evolve the game in Canada? Welcome to the Canadian Elite Basketball League, the dawn of a new era in Canadian basketball. For Canadians, by Canadians.
CEBL is the official men's Division I domestic partner and pro league of Canada. Our goal was to, number one, attract back all those great Canadian players that have had to leave Canada to go play elsewhere. You know, we hear about the brain drain. This is kind of like the athletic drain where all our best ballers have to pick up and go. They got to make their money, they got to get their chance and their opportunity, and those opportunities are always outside of the country.
There's a lot of athletes that they're not necessarily comfortable when they go abroad. And you know, there's the language barrier. There's, you know, just being in a foreign country, the food that gets them out of their comfort zone and not necessarily allows them to play at their highest level or their peak.
We wanted to build a better mousetrap. We wanted to take advantage of the rise of popularity of basketball in this country, what the Raptors have done, what some of the great, you know, prep academies have done, and other groups that have risen to the levels of NBA greatness with all our players. And we wanted to really bring that to every part of the country, from coast to coast.
It really focuses on Canadian talent. The season operates in the summer, which allows Canadians playing abroad in Europe or in Asia to come back in the summer and play in their hometowns.
It's up and down, it's fast paced. You know, the interesting thing about it is there's synergy between FIBA, because it's FIBA rules, but at the same time you're getting North American style athletes that are getting up and down. So it's a cross between what you'd see in the G League and the NBA, very up and down, very athletic, but then FIBA rules where you need spacing on the floor.
You know, I went to the coaches and GMs and said we're going to play with the Elam ending. I think they all wanted to kill me when that first happened. But, you know, to me it was, again, it makes the game better. So it's not just this farce that you do because you want to get the marketing aspect. It really is because you want to improve the game. You want your fan experience to be great. You want it to be like backyard basketball. Next bucket wins.
Across the middle, looking for Moriarty. He's got it. Nobody tackled him. He's fair to run for the end zone. The 5, touchdown.
Being involved in a league based on Canadian content is nothing new to Commissioner Mike Moriarty. And if you think you've heard that name before, well, you're right. Just different sport. Moriarty made a name for himself as a slot back in the CFL with the Argos and the Ticats. So hold on, how does a 2-time Grey Cup champion and most outstanding Canadian find his way to running a league and in a sport that he didn't even make a career out of?
My heart always wanted to be on the business side in the CFL when I retired and moved on. And you know, some things just don't work out the way. Life isn't always a straight line. And I ended up taking another job, and the first person I ran into in this new business line that I was doing was our founder, Richard Petco. And he recognized me in my days in Toronto, which usually I get recognized from Hamilton. I spent a lot of my career there. We started talking about some of the challenges he was having. He was running another team in another league. And we just befriended one another and really had the same shared values about building stuff, being creative. And the result of those efforts are what you see today in the CEBL.
Xavier Moon. You want to talk about blood, sweat, and tears? This man has lived it all, and the journey, it's been something else. After going undrafted in 2017, he took his talents to France. A year later, teams up with his uncle, former Toronto Raptor Xavier Moon, in Albany, New York. From there, he went north of the border. His first stop, London, Ontario, to play in the National Basketball League of Canada. Then a call from Edmonton changed everything. Moon evolved into the face of the league. 2 championships, plus 2 final MVP awards, and 3 in the regular season. All his work and accolades led him to earning a contract with the LA Clippers. Yet Moon knows the CEBL helped take his career to new heights.
Moon, welcome to the family.
I definitely think this past summer was my biggest summer, and that got me interest from the G League. I initially I signed to go to Italy, and then I started getting interest from the G League, so I just started taking over workouts, and it led me to where I am. So definitely, the CEBL definitely played a huge part in that. Not just this past summer, but the 2 summers before that as well. The league's done so much for me, not even just from like my personal success, but my team success as well. Like I've built bonds with those guys that will last forever.
Seeing Xavier Moon, who was our 3-time MVP, get picked up and signed with the LA Clippers was one of the most surreal moments of my life. He did all the heavy lifting. We just provided the platform, and I know he's grateful for it, and we were grateful for the time he spent here. It makes us a better place. Lindell Wigington was another one where it's our top Canadian now. Lindell bounced around and did a lot of G League stuff, and I'm not sure, when people first think, well, I'm going to play in a Canadian league, I'm not sure they really understand it. And then they get here and they play well, and they appreciate it, and they understand the value of building their brand at home and everything that goes along with it.
For a league that's been around for only 3 seasons, the future seems extremely promising. From surviving a pandemic where other bigger, bolder leagues close their doors, to the surging talent that continues to take the CEBL to new levels. So, what's next?
The future to us is bigger, better broadcast deals. 14 to 16 teams in the next 3 to 5 years. Getting into Winnipeg, getting into Calgary, getting into the East Coast, adding a couple teams there, Quebec City in 2024, potential another team in the BC area. And then get into divisional model. And when we get into divisional model of a West, Central, and East, now we can actually play more games because there's less travel. So moving from a 20-game season to a 24 or 28.
The nation, they see it putting up big numbers in the summer series back in 2020. Plus, Commissioner Moriarty's vision of more teams, it's well on its way. In its opening season in 2019, the CEBL started with 6 teams. The Niagara River Lions, formerly of the NBL, the inaugural champs, the Saskatchewan Rattlers, the Fraser Valley Bandits, the Guelph Nighthawks, the Hamilton Honey Badgers, and the reigning back-to-back champions, the Edmonton Stingers. The Ottawa Blackjacks joined the party a year later. And the Montreal Alliance and Newfoundland Growlers will be set to tip off their seasons in 2022.
Time now to take a look at what's on the slate over the course of the next week here in the CEBL, beginning with my game of the week, the one game that you simply must drop everything else for if you are a CEBL fan in the coming 7 days. And for me, on Thursday, it is the Ottawa Blackjacks hosting the Scarborough Shooting Stars, is the one that I'm going to be tuning in for, and so should you. You get Dang Adele, maybe the best player in the CEBL, a guy that I can't get enough of right now, and then the Scarborough Shooting Stars with all of their talent with J. Cole in tow, and of course, looking for their very first win. That one should be a banger at the home of championship weekend. That's on Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on CBC Gem, CEBL Plus, or wherever else you watch your games. But just because Ottawa and Scarborough is my game of the week doesn't mean the rest of the games on the CEBL schedule this week won't also be worth tuning in for. Let's take a look at the calendar check for the next 7 days of CEBL action. Things kick off as the Fraser Valley Bandits look for their third straight road win to start the season when they pay a visit to the Saskatchewan Rattlers at the SaskTel Centre on Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Central Time, and that will conclude the road trip for the Bandits as they look to head back home undefeated. Then on Thursday, we got a pair of games out east for you as the Hamilton Honey Badgers host the Guelph Nighthawks at 7 p.m. Eastern in the first installment of the Battle of Highway 6 this season. Neither of these teams likes losing to the other. That should be a fun one, and that, of course, leads into the 7:30 p.m. start time for the Ottawa-Scarborough game, which is my game of the week. On Friday, the Newfoundland Growlers make their CEBL debut, and it's a tough test as the defending champion Edmonton Stingers are in town to get the ball rolling out there in St. John's. That one at 7:30 p.m. Newfoundland time, 6 p.m. Eastern. On Friday as well, you get the Niagara River Lions hosting the Montreal Alliance for their first game against one another. That one at Meridian Centre at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And then on Saturday, we got a pair of games for you as well, a rematch of the Rattlers and the Bandits from their Wednesday night affair, as the Rattlers will head for the home opener for the Fraser Valley Bandits in their new digs at the Langley Event Center. Then on Monday, it's the second rematch of last year's championship game already this season as the River Lions host the Stingers at Meridian Centre in Niagara. And then the Fraser Valley Bandits host the Hamilton Honey Badgers at 11 a.m. Pacific time, an afternoon game on Tuesday the 7th. And that leads into a nightcap, the Scarborough Shooting Stars taking on the Newfoundland Growlers Tuesday at 7:30 p.m., a pair of inaugural teams taking on one another at the Toronto Pan Am Sports Centre. And just like that, that'll do it for another episode of CEBL Weekly. Thank you so much for tuning in as always. In case you missed it, CEBL Mobile is the official app of the CEBL, and it's now available for all iOS and Android devices. Download now to follow your favorite players, teams, and handsome broadcasters. Also, don't forget to follow us at CEB League on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for all the latest news, updates, and honestly, some pretty fire content as well. The CEBL has also become the first ever professional league in Canada to get into the NFT space. You can now head to CEBL.ca and get your very own limited edition NFT right now. For all other information, head to CEBL.ca. Thank you for tuning in. We'll talk to you again next week on CEBL Weekly.